A woman from Sheffield who's been experiencing symptoms of a condition called endometriosis for the last 10 years says things need to change. The condition is caused when tissue similar to the lining in the womb grows where it shouldn't. This could be around the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, or other organs, and can cause debilitating, lifelong issues. The only way to diagnose it is by keyhole surgery, and waiting times for this are getting worse. According to research from the charity Endometriosis UK, it used to take, on average, 7 years for a diagnosis. Now, women in England are waiting nearly 9 years, and during this time, they'll suffer extreme pain, fatigue, and excessive bleeding. It's also estimated that 10% of women in the UK, which of course means 1 in 10, have the condition. There are now urgent calls for change. This report is brought to you by BBC Radio Sheffield presenter Ellie Colton, who lives with the condition.
Buses run instead of trains on quite a few.
I got diagnosed with endometriosis in 2022 after 8 years of going to the doctors with symptoms. It affects 1 in every 10 women and there's no cure.
Every day I experience severe fatigue, sickness and bloating, as well as that extreme chronic pain in my legs, abdomen and back. Now I'm one of 1.5 million women in the UK living with endometriosis. It's a condition that takes on average 9 years to get diagnosed according to experts, and I'm here in Sheffield to meet one of those waiting.
A lot of the time they think, oh, women just don't have a tolerance to pain. And I promise you, it's not that.
Maddie from Sheffield has experienced debilitating endometriosis symptoms for 10 years and she's still waiting for her diagnosis.
Started having symptoms when I was 13, which was actually having a period for an entire year. That really affected me growing up, and from there I've had really severe abdomen pains, back pain, pain during sex, and feeling extremely fatigued when I'm supposed to be on my period as well. People don't believe you, people dismiss your pain and they blame it on things like your weight. I've had this problem when I was underweight, I've had this problem when I was a normal weight, and I've had this problem now. And over time, it just gets worse and worse.
Maddie is now being referred back to gynecology and is doing everything she can to eliminate the risk of being dismissed due to her weight. And this situation isn't uncommon, according to Maria, who researches health and gender inequalities.
Women have experiences where their pain is just dismissed. So they say to the doctor, I'm having a lot of pain, and they get suggested like maybe diet or exercise, but that's not necessarily going to help.
And what do you think needs to change when it comes to endometriosis?
I mean, reducing the waiting times would be incredible, and that will need investment. And as well, just making sure that people are aware of what the condition is and when they need to seek help.
The charity Endometriosis UK is calling on the government to commit to a diagnosis waiting time of a year or less by 2030. In a statement, the government say endometriosis can be a debilitating condition and that they have set an ambition for better care with reduced wait times for a diagnosis. This year, they say they will introduce women's health hubs to provide care and information for menstrual problems and conditions like endometriosis. A step in the right direction maybe, but for people like Maddie with 10 years on the waiting list already, she feels like she's getting no further forward. Ellie Colton, BBC Look North, Sheffield.
Well, Emma Cox is the head of Endometriosis UK, a charity which supports women with the condition. I asked her why diagnosis takes so long.
I think there's a few reasons. I think there's a historic just lack of interest and investment in women's gynecological health, so people haven't really prioritised it. And sadly, what we hear with this average of nearly 9 years on average to get a diagnosis is people do seek help, but their symptoms just aren't recognised or they're not taken seriously. So we know that we've done a survey recently and 47% of people visit their GP 10 or more times with symptoms before they get a diagnosis. And really sadly, about 78% of people at some point trying to get a diagnosis are told that their symptoms just aren't really that serious, they're not believed, or in fact that they might be just all in their head.
And what does that do to girls and teenagers and women who are dealing with these symptoms?
Well, you know, the symptom, if you're in chronic pain and you sometimes it can be debilitating for some people and you're being told it's in your head, you may be a bit of a wuss or you have to put up with it. And you're told that for the best part of, 9 years. It has a real impact on your mental health as well as your physical health, because of course you're not being believed. You think maybe, is it in my head, etc. And so unfortunately what we find, it can have a really detrimental health on people's ability, their mental health as well as their physical. And so, for example, you can imagine, can't you, if you're having to miss school or work, if you're maybe having to miss your best friend's wedding because you can't get out of bed and everyone just thinks you're being a bit of a wuss, you can imagine the toll that can take.
So do you think just generally we need more awareness in workplaces, socially, in schools?
Absolutely. And we actually campaigned and got menstrual wellbeing included in the school curriculum, but that's only just before COVID. And clearly schools have had a lot on. But what we want the education system now to do is to say, right, menstrual wellbeing should be included in the school curriculum. We should be teaching about menstrual health to all children to overcome the taboo and help people who need it seek help. But also we need much more awareness, as you said, and also better training of our healthcare professionals so that they actually are learning about menstrual health.
Once someone is diagnosed, what are the treatments like?
So once you get a diagnosis, at the moment, the treatments tend to be either surgery, which actually is to remove the endometriosis, or the disease can be managed through hormones for some people, or the symptoms managed through pain management. But again, unfortunately, there's quite limited treatment because there just hasn't been the investment in research, despite it affecting 1 in 10 women and those assigned female at birth.
I mean, I was just about to say that this isn't a small number of women that this is affecting, is it?
No, it isn't. It's about, so everyone listening will know someone with endometriosis, whether they know that or not. It's 10% of women and those assigned female birth, and the disease is active from puberty through to menopause. But of course, the scarring and the internal damage there might be doesn't just disappear on menopause. So we believe the impact can be felt for life.
So what needs to change then?
I think a few things need to change. We'd like to see government commitment to drive down diagnosis times and to commit to aiming for an average of a year or less by 2030. And we think that is doable if the NHS implements the guidelines already in place. There are guidelines out there about how endometriosis should be diagnosed and treated, but unfortunately they've not yet actually been implemented. And also if the NHS wakes up and realises what the volume of the issue is, and our concern is that the gynecological health, menstrual health conditions like endometriosis just aren't prioritised. They're not seen as serious. And so there's not enough time scheduled to support people with the diseases. Yet, as we've said, they can have a really devastating effect.
Emma, thank you for your time this afternoon.